Welcome, everyone, to a Wednesday evening with Clear Mountain and Redwood Vihara, including our good friends Jin Chuan and Jin Wei. Good to see you, Venerables.
Likewise.
Yeah, honored to be here.
Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we dealt with the technical difficulties. A brief introduction. When Longpo Sumedho first met the Chan Master Hua in California in the late 1980s, he said he was the only person he'd met who had the same aura as Ajahn Chah. Master Hua reciprocated, saying they'd practiced together in previous lives, and in the end, donated the land which would eventually become a Biogiri monastery, where Ajahn Kovilo ordained, and I spent quite a while. His monastic lineage continues in California and in the friendship between traditions, in the figures of our good brothers Jin Chuan Shi and Jin Wei Shi.
So Venerables Jin Chuan and Jin Wei both found their spiritual calling early in life and now serve as monastics in the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association. Jin Chuan, raised in Silicon Valley, discovered Buddhism while studying physics and religious studies at Stanford, eventually becoming a resident at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, also known as CTTB, in 2005, and receiving full ordination in 2013. Jin Wei Shi, originally from Poland, began meditating in 1999, and after reading a translation of the Sixth Patriarch Sutra, committed himself to Dharma service, eventually arriving at the city in 2013 and ordaining in 2017. They both hold MA degrees in Buddhist classics from Dharma Realm Buddhist University, where Jin Chuan now serves as assistant professor and chaplain. So, Venerables, thank you very much for being with us and for your patience. Yeah. So maybe we can just begin by hearing about how you two met one another.
Okay. Well, I remember meeting Jin Wei Shi back in, I don't know what year it was when you came for the Chan session.
2008.
2008. And he at that time was a layman named Marek from Poland with not much English, but with a lot of sincerity. And he joined the full Chan session. And afterwards, he stayed after to volunteer. And I remember sitting with him in the circle with another one of his friends. And they were very hardworking, flying all the way from Poland, coming to America, and just joining all the ceremonies and practices. The one thing that I was really struck by was he had a very kind of consistent bowing practice. Bowing, I just heard, was it like 1,600?
A lot
of bows, a lot of bows a day. And I remember just every break period, not maybe every, but many of the break periods, he would just be there bowing at high speed, up and down, up and down, up and down. And I was like, wow, this guy is pretty intense, And maybe to say, so later he came and joined the monastery, and I feel very honored to actually be able to spend so much time with him, because he's somebody who started out, I would say, with this very strong practice, but actually deep down, he's a very gentle heart. And there's a kind of humor, lightheartedness, care that he just kind of carries around him in the atmosphere. And I think it really balances out my kind of sometimes a little bit more serious kind of planning mind. So that's something I really appreciate about his presence and being with him all these years.
Jin Wei, did you have anything to add to that, or?
Well, yeah, definitely. Meeting Jin Chuan Shi was very important in my spiritual life in many ways. First of all, when I came to California first, I remember he was involved in almost everything. I remember helping with the microphones in the Chan session. He was almost the first one, who's standing there in the morning ceremony. And he had this kind of serious look. I was like, this guy knows why he is there, And I clearly remember this moment, especially when I have a kind of a dark or doubtful time at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, when I moved over there and was very confused what I'm doing here, and you're kind of navigating with the multicultural kind of misunderstanding and a lot of Chinese, and practicing 5 hours chanting in Chinese every day. It's like, wow, I don't know that I can make it. And one of those days and one of those evenings when you feel alone and I don't know that I belong here, I hear the doors, someone knocking on my door. Is Jin Chuan Shi here? He was not that serious at the moment,
Yeah.
kind of smiling. Do you want to go for a walk? I say, sure. And I was desperate to have a companion, and here he is. And he gave me an MP3 recordings of Ajahn Amaro, who became a lifeline for me and something that was a real medicine. And and I listening every moment, like every given moment. And over the years, I learn a lot of with Jin Chuan Shi, especially his kind of endless energy. What he has, it's like wow, from early morning to the end of the day, and and he's tracking a lot of stuff. I can say from mentioned before the RBU university, some SLTP Sangha Lady Training Program, the chaplaincy. It's like talk about things what he's involved, we can take it 20 minutes to but I very inspire me. At the same time, he never complain about this and have kind of enthusiasm that he's kind of really want to help, and always find the time to talk to you even in these busy days, and you don't feel that you are a burden in any sense. So I kind of very we can talk later about different details, but to have him as a companion and is a real privilege, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, we didn't mention on this recording yet, but we were hoping that the theme for tonight's conversation would be just this: friendship, kalyanamitta, beautiful friendship, spiritual friendship, noble friendship. And I myself, I met Jin Chuan Shi when we were both still laymen, probably around that same area, the Great Compassion House.
Yeah. That's the
yeah. And Jin Chuan Shi,
same dorm.
Same dorm. Oh my God.
One, this is
what a weird place. The small little like stalls between the toilets. That was an odd feature of the place. But you. I think we were studying Bhikkhu Bodhi's writings together at that time. There were like texts that we printed out from the internet. So I've known you both for quite some time, and just really want to learn more about perspectives on friendship. So,
and one of the kind of resonances between, and one reason we really wanted this 2-on-2 interview was you two have been, in some ways, you're the most resonant, pair of monastics in terms of what we're also doing. You're, just introducing this on the live stream is Jin Chuan Shi and Jin Wei Shi are helping found, create, we couldn't think of the right term, Redwood Vihara in California, as sort of a new community. They're also using this kind of co-monk model to do so. They embody this friendship. They've been friends of ours. They also embody this very particular and precious synergy between the Ajahn Chah lineage and Master Hua lineage, the Mahayana and Theravada, and just kalyanamitta on a lot of different levels. So, just to kind of center in on, there's different strata of friendship we could talk about there, but one that I'm curious about is how have you two, it's the archetype of two men leading a community. It's almost an anti-archetype. Usually you have the like brothers arguing, like at the beginning of Sparta, and you haven't killed each other yet, Romulus and Remus.
We're still alive.
So how have you navigated, the harder forces of being a pair? What's the greatest blessing and the greatest challenge you found in navigating a new community as a pair?
You want to start? Okay. Greatest blessing. Well, I think the greatest blessing for me with Jin Wei Shi around, maybe greatest is hard to say, but definitely one blessing, is that whenever we do something, I have another person's perspective to look at it. Because I think when you're starting to do something and it's new and also involves other people, You were kind of taking care of people, members of the community, being able to ask somebody else their perspective, who's quite different. So Jin Wei Shi sees things from a completely different angle than I do. And as we talk about it and listen to each other, we come up with insights that I can definitely say I wouldn't come up on my own. And that's been extremely helpful. I mean, sometimes there really is conflict in the monastery. You know, some people aren't getting along. And so I might go and want to do something, but before I do that, you know, I sit down, we talk about Jin Wei Shi, and we learn some NVCs, which is nonviolent communication. So we spend quite a bit of time, we think about, so what do you think this person's value is, you know?
Oh gosh, it's this whole
what do you think their needs are? Okay, we got to brainstorm. And what I found was that if we both lock in on a need of that person and we both agree to it, that's usually kind of on, because we come from a different angles. And so that additional perspective I found kind of invaluable for being able to be kind of taking care of a community. And I think in many ways it's important, because sometimes when you are kind of I don't really see myself as a leader, but I can see having more and more responsibilities, you become a little bit narrow-minded in a way, because you start to kind of make decisions and you kind of want to be right in a way. I want
to hear that.
I want to be a little bit reinforcement. And so when you're just talking with somebody else and you have that back and forth, you kind of soften and you kind of are just more flexible. So I found that to be really invaluable. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I think that first of all, it's coming from, I can't find good word, but like a passion for service, so to speak, and especially be around community and knowing that community is so important right now. And so how we show up in meaningful way, what is our role? And part of this is deeply kind of listening how we can support others people's values. And you know, and this coming hours of conversation. So one event, usually when our event is behind us, like 3 hours investigation, you know, going around who is coming, what their value, what they looking for, how we can, and it's interesting. And because we're listening each other so much, once I remember Bhikkhu Bodhi joke that, you guys can finish your sentences like this, one for one, back and forth, because we spend so much time together. And maybe this also the monastery give an opportunity to know each other very, very well. We know our strengths, but we know also our weak points, and very well. And for me, the value is, sometimes in the world, people take advantage. If you have weak points, you don't want to show, you want to be visible or perform in a particular way. Here is almost opposite. You know, we kind of, is a kind of jam session. What we try to do together, often it's not working according with the plan, but with the good companion, you can fail completely and you feel okay in the end. So yeah, but it's a good question how to navigate and balance that the different views, different opinions. I think that for us it's very important listening, one of the important qualities.
And I think what you're saying about challenges, that definitely there are times, you know, we have various kind of habits that arise that we know maybe don't appreciate as much in each other, you know, and those are definitely the places of rub. I mean, I think to me, one of the places is kind of, I'm a lot more kind of time oriented. So like, I want to do something, I want to be like on time and take care of things. Jin Wei Shi is much more a free spirit. He cares a lot more about what's going on in the moment and the relationships. And so what I found, I can miss those moments because I want to make sure we stay on time. At the same time, I feel like sometimes we're late for something because we're like in the moment of doing something, you know? And so that balance as a kind of a constant dance. And we had many hours of conversation about this because I'm like, let's try to work together here.
But you see, I'm more jazz musician, he's classic musician. So we try to navigate when we jam together both ways. Yeah.
Can you relate to living with a jazz musician, Ajahn?
Oh yeah, this guy is like constantly in the present moment. It's actually something you touched on, and something that this Vasa, Ajahn Nisabho and I are living closer than we usually do. Usually we're in separate huts, and that's how it is like in our Thai forest tradition, is that all the monks have their own hut, which oftentimes is outside of vocal distance, hearing distance, and like sight. So I can't even see my neighbor monk. I can't hear them when they're chanting. And I know in the city of 10,000 Buddhist tradition, it's often the case at the monasteries that you've lived in that you're in the same building, or maybe even like sharing a wall with each other. And I'm curious if you have any like just friendship advice about that. A lot of people, especially, I mean, you know, don't want to equate us too much with, you know, married couples, but, you know, there are, you know, adult friendships where, you know, people share a house or share a space. And curious if you have any specific insights or thoughts about that.
Well, what I found over the years being in the monastery that allows for, you could say, this kind of wholesome friendship or noble friendship is, as Jin Wei Shi mentioned, this quality of listening, and kind of when something happens that maybe there's going to be friction, to kind of take a deep breath and kind of listen really what's going on inside of me. Because oftentimes where tension arises, where the blame starts, and that person is wrong, or how can they do that to me? You know, and it's like, okay, just take a step and start listening to those inner voices, and just kind of relaxing around them and giving them space. And I found it actually just by doing that, like 90% of the tension just kind of slowly dissipates. That I really found, especially grounded in the body, and if we use kind of loving kindness, this kind of welcoming heartfulness, kind of like being a good friend to yourself, the Kalyana Mitra to yourself. And as that kind of softens, then my heart can a little bit more open to really listen to what's really going on with the other person. And so when I have that kind of empathy, the other like 10% melts away, and then we can have like a conversation about something if it really needs a conversation. Oftentimes I find it doesn't need it. It kind of just works itself out in its own way, because we can adjust. I find like most of the real conflicts happen over tiny things that actually don't really matter. It's like, who does the dishes, you know? I mean, it does matter at some level because of the shared responsibility, but is it worth having like an hour argument over something that just takes 10 minutes to do, you know? It's like you can work out a way to resolve differences that aren't from hostility and anger, but from a kind of mutual care and understanding. So I found that kind of softening and listening to be really helpful for me, at least in a relationship.
And Ajahn, you mentioned is true that the training that we received, it is you are kind of arm to arm with your neighbor all day, and from different cultures, countries, and it can produce some afflictions from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably know.
Definitely.
And, you know, but it is at the same time, we share so much time, but mostly we are brothers in arms with our afflictions. And, you know, and it's very unique condition and situation, because a lot of potential conflicts or things what was produce a lot of stress become a source of jokes later on, and so on. And you see, wow, you went from this and this and that, and you know, one is listening, but another important element is a sense of humor, I can say. And sometimes we're joking, whatever is City of 10,000 Buddhas is like constant sitcom, you know, because things are so sometimes unpredictable, like Monty Python almost type situations. You know, you remember that in the restroom?
There's an interesting. We have a jug in the bathroom, and it's like a, you know, those 2-gallon milk jugs.
Oh yeah,
and it's got this black sludge in it. So it's on the bottom shelf of the monastery in the back.
Hmm.
And the bottom it's black sludge. And on the jug it says, "Please do not drink." I'm like, wow.
I've written that on jugs before.
Label on that jug. I don't know. I've not even thought in my mind. It's black sludge. You drink it.
Maybe that's the next video. Let's not. You know, it's interesting. Just so many resonances between your relationship and ours. Actually, the jazz and classical, I think, is a good one. And also just the beauty, like what you're talking about with Jin Chuan, about pausing and, you know, watching that tension of wanting to be right dissolve. I think they did a series of studies after the 2008 financial crisis where they sort of did some tests on people who'd been in unmitigated positions of authority alone for multiple years, and their ability to empathize had really dried up. Like their mirror neurons actually even had withered to a substantial extent. And yeah, I also find the need to kind of stop and not buy into my own opinions again and again is one of the best part of my practice, and the power of nonviolent communication in doing that, and that framework of stating an observation, the need, the request, or observation, feeling, need, request, has been so key. And I find it very interesting that that's the role you see yourselves as playing in a community, is helping support people's needs. Do you want to just, you know, I usually wouldn't stop on the nonviolent communication framework, but it's been so key to us. Do you mind just speaking to the observation, feeling, need, request framework briefly?
Yeah, I mean, we found to be extremely powerful, so that essentially NVC is probably one of the first things we introduced to men training at the monastery. Actually, our community, you know, sometimes lay women also come and spend a day to practice with us. And, you know, just to give you an example, we have one really tough guy at our monastery. You know, he's a construction worker, and so he kind of grew up, you know, in this environment where you don't really use NVC. You use, you know,
who's right,
and you think he's right, you know, and everything you do is wrong. Wrong. I didn't even tell that to us, you know. We're working together. Of course, Jin Wei Shi and myself know no construction really, you know. So we're like, we barely know how, like, what tool is this? I have no idea what this thing is.
Carrying this hammer like a baby.
Okay. You know, I remember
sharing your feelings.
And so, you know, there's times when we sit down and we kind of think, so what do you think his needs are? What do you think his feelings are? What do you think he's seeing?
But you remember we screw up once when he had a project and we used the
wrong paint. Yeah.
And, you know, and he came, we spent many hours. It was evening, I think 11 p.m. or so. We're still painting. He came to our room. This paint is wrong. So we paint the walls with the paint dedicated for the door. And he was very upset, you know, about this. And we used this as a case later in the classroom to impact what Victor wanted to share with us. We say his name.
Yeah, well, his feelings, you know, like, well, he's feeling frustrated, you know, because he really wants, actually, we felt really what he was wanting was support. And that's what we want to support, because he's such a dedicated volunteer, really helping out, putting his whole energy to supporting the monastery. And so we went really with a spirit of wanting to support him and feeling like we're in this together, you know. And so, but sadly, we show up. Actually, I wasn't there. It was Jin Wei Shi and some of the men. And we, you know, ended up wasting the paint because we used the wrong one. And so rather than actually feeling supported, he actually felt, you know, we made more work. He values kind of frugality. But anyway, so our last move was saying, so like, if we were to translate what he said into NVC, it'd be something like, so you use the paint for the door on the wall. And I feel really frustrated because I really value your support. Can I make a request that next time before you use the paint, can you look at it more carefully to see if it's the right paint, or come and ask me? And it's interesting, when you start to translate people's words into the observations, feelings, needs, and requests, it takes the barb out of them, and then you can actually really connect with the person. And so that's why we found it so powerful. And I actually think if you want to relate it to the spirit of spiritual friendship, I think really spiritual friends are supporting each other's wholesome values. That's at the deeper level. It's not about, like, there's a kind of enjoying each other's company, but that's actually not the main point.
Yeah.
The main point is actually supporting each other's kind of spiritual aspirations, or you can say their deeper values. And so somebody's values might be, contribution. So how do we really support their ability to contribute to the monastery or to wherever some people really value freedom? How do we help them mature in their freedom and their kind of spaciousness in their heart?
Exactly. I know that Jin Chuan Shi value authenticity, for instance. So when I share something, it actually has to come from genuine heart and so on. And how we can create the space when people can be authentic, for instance, because he deeply value about this. And so this is one of the things what we often do, a little exercise about to choose your core values. And sometimes we don't ask ourselves, we don't even know what is important for us. But NVC helps a lot to especially navigate in situation where they're tough or kind of like conflict resolutions. And we found that also Oren's software approach, I think you interviewed him once, right? Or two. And he blend very well that Marshall Rosenberg, the technique with the Dharma practice. So leading with presence, the body awareness, bringing the caring curiosity, what is loving kindness, and focusing what really matters, what is NVC. And the whole thing we noticed is extremely helpful, not just for monastic life, but any situation, whatever we are, families, in the workplaces, and so on. So it's a very important skill to learn.
Yeah, just mentioning Oren's book, it's called Say What You Mean. And our kind of acronym for that main structure of nonviolent communication is oftener, as in we should practice this framework oftener, more often. Observation, feelings, needs, and requests. So,
wow.
Yeah, good fun. I'm curious. So we're all monks here, and I'm curious if you've found any specific skillful means from the monastic discipline. And I know you've come to Abhayagiri on multiple occasions to participate in the monks' Vinaya class, talk about our monastic rules, and either from our Vinayas are very close, our monastic codes are very close, if close to identical. And what tools or structures from the monastic discipline have you been able to take out and then be able to extrapolate and find useful for other relationships?
Well, one of the areas in the Vinaya that I found very helpful is it's interesting because this is a kind of a combination. I think it was something that happens also is going on in the world, and like particularly in schools, called restorative practices, and also within the Vinaya where you have confession, kind of repentance and renewal. And when I found those two different systems, there's almost like a perfect match. And I was like, there was like something deep in my heart goes, ding, this is what, I mean, kind of a sense of this leads to a place of liberation and well-being. And it's because what happens often in society is that we have a punitive system. So something goes wrong and what happens? So what happened? Who did it? What's their punishment? Those are the questions we ask in a kind of, oftentimes in school, you could get sent to detention or suspended or expelled, right? There's a kind of a punitive mindset there. Whereas our restorative mindset is, so something happened. Now let's actually really look into it. So really what happened? Who was hurt? How are you hurt by it? Oftentimes when we do something, we harm somebody else, say with our words or our actions, we feel pain inside. We have a loss of kind of a sense of integrity. And so it's connecting to that, and also connecting to, what was the pain or suffering I caused on the other person, and really being aware of that. What's the impact on the community that witnessed what happened? And then the last question is really valuable, is then how do we heal? How do we kind of make things right in the restorative practices language? And I found this to be also within the monastic tradition, in the sense that the Buddha didn't create any of the rules in order to punish the monks. It's about restoring. So, okay, you made a mistake, somebody says foolish man, but you made a mistake. Okay, now don't go that way anymore, because that's going to actually lead to more suffering. But if you can confess, take responsibility, you recommit to your vows, you're back on the path. No stigma, no kind of guilt trip. It's like we're all in this together. As you said, it's a training rule. And I found this especially well done at Abhayagiri Monastery, that the rules are held in this kind of spirit. And that's something I think both of us really benefited from being in the Vinaya classes there, being exposed to the monastic community there, and really talking to the monks about how they've held the precepts and the guidance they've been getting from their senior teachers like Ajahn Amaro and others. And so I think that's actually something very beautiful. And so if people are interested, I actually think it's something, to me, there's a couple essential skills in modern life that if you want to have kind of a wholesome family, a wholesome relationship, that's really important to learn. One is body awareness, one is loving kindness, one is NVC, and the last one is restorative practices. Because the restorative practice allows you to hold accountability in a space without going to anger, punishment, or kind of this forceful righteousness, but you're still holding people accountable. Because sometimes you can say, oh, I'm the very loving kindness, and we become kind of passive and pleasing or something. That's not really skillful. This loving kindness has to be strong, clear, and able to hold people to a standard, because especially when we're starting a community, we have to actually protect the space that people can come into and feel safe. So I mean, that's kind of an initial thought.
And what came to me, of course, I agree with Jin Chuan Shi, and was quite also amazing, as you mentioned, when able to be in the Vinaya class in the Abhayagiri, to see this group of mans are fully in to learn how to apply ahimsa, non-violence, in their life. And to say what inspire us, and this is part of Vinaya, but also part of unique setup of the, in this case, Abhayagiri, but is present in all the forest monasteries, is creating a new archetype for a man. Sometimes it's happened, as we notice in tradition in China, in ours, the guys are kind of spiritual warriors. We go for China, chi, and you go almost to the battle. It's good to have sometimes that. I'm kind of immediately identified that kind of my manhood. No, okay, kind of MMA with my afflictions. Let's go for. It's sometimes nice to have this fearless spirit.
Yeah.
But what I'm very appreciate is blended with gentleness, softness, and appears in the moments when especially junior monks serve to elders.
Oh yeah.
It's so beautiful to watch if it's done from the heart of support. And it's almost learning a new ability to have this panoramic awareness to see what is needed, how I can support my teacher, support my senior brothers where I'm learning from. And we notice this is like a very important skill in the future teachers who are growing in this environment, to know how to appear in the community in very gentle, serving, and appropriate way. And it's kind of this attentiveness, is this loving kindness in action, so to speak. How washing the hands of the teacher, like on the knees, kind of slowly moving very quietly to offer a tea. They're simple gesture of kindness, and is done genuinely. Just observing that is kind of create this chemistry that feel the heart. It's kind of a beauty when you witness, and this beauty shifting something in you. So this is something what we are very inspired
Yeah.
to see, to learn, and also to have in Redwood Vihara as well.
I mean, just as one last sentence to that, and I think that's actually very applicable to living in the world as well. And this is actually one of the things that really transformed my relationship with my parents, is when I actually started paying attention to my parents in that way. How can I really be of service and help make their lives a little bit better?
Yeah.
I mean, in our American society, sometimes we blame our parents for a lot of things. And of course, parents aren't perfect, they're human. And it's amazing when you start to actually just do small gestures of care, how it starts to unlock things in the family that you never thought was possible. Because it's just sometimes you don't do it, and all of a sudden you're like, you help with the dishes when you aren't asked to do it. You help, with their parents with doing this or that, or cleaning things up for them in certain ways that they don't expect it. All of a sudden they go, oh, the first day I was completely like shocked, because this is like, because oftentimes we grew up in America, as I grew up in America, it's very self-centered. Like, I'm just doing what I want to do. My parents are just take care of me. I'm just getting my needs met. All of a sudden, like, I'm part of the family, and I actually care deeply about my parents. I want to show up in a way that really honors them and serves them. And when they feel that, it's amazing how things start to open up. So I just want to say that piece is actually very key.
Say, like, turning duty into beauty.
Yeah.
So instead of to seeing like, oh, there's responsibilities and burden, I don't want to do it. When we see as opportunities to actually connect, something shifting.
Yeah.
Also in our heart, because when we do something genuinely with the kind eyes, we know the one of friend Zilong, I think.
Yeah.
How he transformed and introduced meditation for his parents. He started doing the dish wishes, to do the dishes, and slowly parents connected that his enthusiasm to do the dishes with his Vipassana Goenka courses, and somehow they was very curious and went and start meditating. Because of their son with genuine heart want to after the dinner of the lunch wish the dishes. So their simple act of kindness what really matters. And we kind of small micro doses of kindness changes atmosphere.
It's it's a much better use of the term microdosing, which is so in vogue these days. So I love that. Just a microdose of kindness here and there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And you too, you're speaking to these qualities of uju, uprightness, with the restorative practice, and mudu, sort of softness, with like how one approaches parents. These are two of the qualities spoken of in the Buddha's Words on Loving Kindness, the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And just you pointing those out is really meaningful. Every 2 weeks, as you know, we confess with one another our faults, and I do this with my parents as well. When we take leave, is sort of, we all say things that we wish we'd done better, and you say, do you see, will you be restrained in the future? I'll be restrained in the future. And it's such a cleansing quality or system. And also just those 4 qualities you brought up of body awareness, loving kindness, nonviolent communication, and restorative practice are just such a beautiful list of 4. I really like that. Since we only have a few more minutes before we have to go to Zoom, and we do want to keep you to a little longer since we started late, I wondered if you would talk about this. You have different models of organizational structure, and you have some kind of old ones which don't work as well in the modern environment as much, and then you have the Kalyanamitta system, which you two have kind of come up with and articulated. So would you speak to that kind of paradigm?
Want to start?
So, okay, I can start. Yeah, this is came from try to figure it out how we organize, and it's not that easy to figure it out when you enter to that multicultural organization, and like I said, Dharma Realm Buddhist Association. And we try to use this as a kind of descriptive model, not to criticize, but more clinically observe what's going on here. And we found that there are few models coexist together, and sometimes they collide, but maybe later we talk about this. That first of all, first model, what we kind of seeing here, and not just in our association, but globally in the Buddhist world, not just Buddhist, is kind of more traditional model. When it's very kind of top down, very often the Asian disciples who come to the monastery, the first question is, who is the abbot? And okay, and how I can fit in and follow. I want to be, very clearly engage with the community in the hierarchical kind of structure. And we found that it's very useful and good for, to maintain and conserve the traditional values. But it's not very skillful or good for innovations like, AI, ChatGPT, and what's happening right now in Silicon Valley. So sometimes that the traditional approach doesn't match this innovative and liberal and kind of progressive way of
Yeah, Macy, how it really shows up for us is we're have a kind of lineage from China, and it's come here to California or many different places. And oftentimes the emphasis on maintaining tradition, and when we try to maintain tradition, sometimes anything that's kind of innovative or adaptive can be seen as a threat. So it's not so great at adapting. So that's kind of the first traditional, right?
Yeah.
And then another one we have is
consensus.
We call it consensus model. And we were kind of thinking through the different groups of people who came to the monastery. So oftentimes, of course, there's a variety of people, but usually those coming from an Asian background have kind of expectations like a traditional model. And those coming from the West, from America especially, we have a much more democratic kind of consensus orientation. Everybody's views is heard. There's a sense of trying to get to consensus. And in this process, there's a lot more inclusivity. There's a much more kind of sensitivity. There's much more peer-to-peer kind of energy. Equality is really important. But what we found is sometimes difficult is that, especially when you get to be a larger group, like, are you going to include everybody in every decision? I mean, like 20, 30, 40 people. Wow, that's going to be a lot of meetings. and then how do you hold people accountable? Everybody's equal. So the accountability becomes a lot more tricky, So there's a lot of other elements to that, what makes this consensus model somewhat tricky, trying to have everybody be equal, everybody getting along, kind of this sense of inclusivity all the time.
And of course, a quality model and the consensus model is very good to create the harmony and create a sense of belonging. But sometimes in the name of the harmony, we don't want to speak of the things which are maybe not that beautiful or express what is in the heart. So we can create this kind of false harmony and put under the rug things which are not fit into the kind of common agreement. So we notice that sometimes all those systems has drawbacks, and it's not that easy to navigate those.
And so another system that we found happens quite a lot as well is we called it achievement model. And this is when there's a project to do. You're trying to build a building, or we have schools, so people are trying to get accredited. And then you need to really do something. And so you usually have like a small committee, like a core committee or a master plan committee or a coordinating committee, whatever you want to call it, executive committee. And they basically come up with a plan and they allocate resources and they implement. And this is kind of what I think we see in corporations around the world. They have this kind of very detailed plan where they implement. And it's effective, you can get things done. But what we found also happens is sometimes you lose the humanity. people start to feel like cogs in another person's plan. You're just like this little, you just do this part for me, okay? And you just kind of pushed off to the side. And I think many of us coming to a spiritual community are actually looking for something deeper than trying to execute somebody else's plan. And so we found that's another model which is good for projects, but sometimes not so skillful for a spiritual community when people are coming in and want their kind of humanity to be honored.
Yeah, and sometimes, unfortunately, this achievement model are very focused on the numbers and kind of success and whatever. And most of us came to the live in spiritual life, be monastics, because we are tired of it. Now we have is another way to be.
Yeah, but actually, in Buddhist groups, this actually has kind of been a pretty big influence. Like we know Buddhist groups where monastics actually have pressure to bring in disciples or bring in certain amount of donations and these kind of things. And Master Hua was like very explicit, in DRBA, monastics do not do that. In China, oftentimes, for instance, monastics actually do ceremonies for kind of money. I don't know if not so much in Thai forest tradition, but sometimes we get calls in the monastery and people have a member of the family pass away, so they want monastics to come and chant. And so in various monasteries, like, okay, so how much is it for 4 monks? And it becomes like this kind of transactional mindset for the Dharma. And Master Hua says we don't do that. If we support people's in their lives, they can come to the monastery, we can cultivate together, dedicate merit, but it's not this transactional mindset for the Dharma.
Yeah, so we're not in fundraising kind of model in any ways.
So what's the solution? What's the Kalyanimittam?
Yeah, so
is it the number 4?
Number 4, we have one more, which is tribal, which we won't go into. That one's much more around kind of belonging and having kind of a small group that gets something done that kind of is a little bit exclusive, that kind of works together as a team. And we found that's not so easy for collaboration because they kind of get a little bit narrow. So we kind of reflected on it, looking in the Buddhist tradition, and the noble friendship came up pretty strong. I mean, the story with Venerable Ananda going to the Buddha, saying half the spiritual life is noble friendship, and the Buddha saying, "No, Ananda, do not say that. The entire holy life is spiritual friendship or noble friendship." And he actually defines what that is as somebody who helps you on the Eightfold Path and that leads you to solitude, maturing in real freedom and release. And so when we reflected on that, we realized actually, if you took the lens of noble friendship, which is around supporting each other's spiritual aspirations on this noble path, you can begin to see the value in traditions. Just like we were talking about before, this upataking, about honoring our elders, taking care of them, really requesting guidance from them and learning from them, right? And then the elders supporting and caring for the younger generation. It's not that you don't have a hierarchy, but the hierarchy is in service to the spiritual aspirations of everyone. The consensus isn't that we all have to get along and like each other, is that there's a real sense of equality in the Sangha, that we're actually taking care of each other. And we don't always get along. That's kind of, the way human nature is. But that at the ground level, we are on the spiritual path together. And I'm here wishing you well, you're wishing me well. Like Ajahn Sumedho says, you can love somebody but not like them.
Yeah.
That's very true, right? That's the spirit. And then for the achievement model.
We need to do some things, but it doesn't mean we have to take identity to create a success or prove ourselves, and very skillfully, navigate those needs.
Yeah.
But in the end, we found that this is, instead of plan and execute model, we use the, listen and respond model. Mm-hmm. So what is needed? Of course, we need to plan, and the achievement model teach that. But sometimes when you lock in the master plans, we don't see what things changing constantly, and how to adapt into it, how to shift and change plans. We plan a lot.
Yeah.
At the same time, as we be ready to drop those plans in the second, and move to jazz session mode, and back again to planning and learn. So it's not. I think that spiritual models teach us to not be fixed on any other models.
Yeah, we like to joke about that one. So in the Heart Sutra, it says there is nothing to attain. So what's the
nothing to
achievement?
attain model.
So actually, the achievement that you're trying to achieve is letting go.
Yeah.
You're trying to achieve, this ability just to let go completely and be in service to everyone. And so that's kind of the achievement. And the last one, which is the tribal, for us, that's actually really this wholesome community, this kind of ability, because we're going to create small groups of people. That's naturally how humans are. We have small groups of friends and things, but to make those kind of groups as welcoming and harmonious as possible. So when people come in it's not like, oh, I'm an in-group, you're an out-group. It's like, no, we're all in this together. So it's like a porous membrane that allows people to come in and feel part of it. And that this group isn't kind of working in a kind of bubble of its own. It's actually constantly attuned to what's going on around. So we're able to synchronize with the greater ecosystem.
And we don't want to create that everyone is the same. We join our Redwood Vihara team and everyone wearing the same kind of, t-shirts and so forth. It's more because it's natural that people have more affinity one on another, but how they can hold the spaces and navigate the differences to serve, and to welcome one another. So the model is not to create the one organization, what is completely the same.
And for maybe to finish, I think the kind of metaphor that we often use, or the imagery we often use, is the redwood trees. And like Redwood Vihara. So you have these redwood trees that when you're there, they grow hundreds of feet tall. They're these amazing kind of trees that have this tremendous presence. But what's interesting about them that's often not known is their roots are actually quite shallow, but they spread out like 50, 100 feet around the tree. So when you're walking the redwood forest, you're actually walking on their roots, and their roots intertwine. And they don't just support each other in big storms so they don't get blown over. They actually send nutrients to each other. They feed each other. They take care of each other. And so what we see is that, these noble friendships, we take care of each other, we support each other, often invisibly. But then we let each of us grow to our heights on our own. That's kind of the spirit. And so in many ways, what we see you're doing in Clear Mountain Monastery is deeply connected to what we're doing in Redwood Vihara.
Exactly.
Because we kind of invisibly are connected and supporting one another. This kind of friendship that just kind of supports each other and grows in its own ways.
And it's, another phenomenon that's happened in Redwood Forest that they call fairy rings, right? That when the one tree was cutted or died, for different reasons, the next generation kind of formed a circle. And as Jin Chuan Shi says, that they are intertwined, their roots and so forth, but connected to the teaching of the Buddha, we can say, of timeless wisdom. And all this kind of roots allows to this tree be so tall. The tallest ones, they are like Statue of Liberty.
300 plus feet tall.
So it's kind of constant reminder for us to be in the redwoods, that you see this amazing cathedrals, those trees, but they are that strong because they're interconnected and supported behind.
Yeah.
Well, Venerables, thank you so much for being with us. I've, of course, had the privilege of going down to Redwood Vihara at least once and walked amongst the redwoods there. So beautiful. I hope everybody has a chance to go down and visit, maybe in small doses. Don't all go at once. Don't overwhelm the Venerables. But how might other people be able to tap in? I know you're partially sometimes at Redwood Vihara, sometimes at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I think I know you have a pod or like a whole teaching session on the website Service Space.
Yes.
Specifically on noble friendship.
Yes.
Are there other ways, or how can people kind of tap into what you're doing in your teachings?
Well, I think the first way is to visit the Redwood Vihara website. And if you're interested in visiting, you can type in the contact form. And we're in the process of kind of moving there because, as Jin Wei Shi says, we were involved with many different things. So we're right now kind of, our roots are connected to many different places, and we're being nurtured by many of them. And we're also kind of called to serve in these different places. But our intention is to really put down our roots at Redwood Vihara. And so I think in the upcoming years, as we're also trying to make that a training monastery in our system, kind of inspired by the forest monasteries in the Ajahn Chah lineage. You know, you train in the wilderness and close to nature. We want to bring that spirit as well into our lineage. And of course, we also have our Chan roots, our Zen roots that have a lot of this connection to the natural world. And so I think the first place, you kind of go to the website, you can put in the chat box if you're interested. And we have regular community days. Like for instance, this August 2nd, just in Saturday, we're going to have a group come down and have a work in the forest. We have an amazing artist, part of the community, who just made a Redwood Vihara seal. I don't want to see it. I can bring it over, Jin Wei Shi says, but he's going to share about it. And so that's probably the easiest way to connect. Otherwise, we're doing various retreats. So at the 16,000 Buddhas, we have 2 or 3 Guanyin retreats. Guanyin Bodhisattva is the embodiment of great compassion. And we lead those with Doug Powers, who is also a very kind of inspiring teacher. One of the wisest people I know. You know, we kind of joke he's like Prajnaparamita.
When we call him, we actually chant Prajnaparamita.
Yeah, just for fun.
For fun.
But yeah, he's very wise and very funny. And so if people have time, you can find the extension.drbu.edu website. We have Buddha Root Farm up in Oregon that happens once a year.
In June, July.
And this November, we're actually going to be going to Australia, Gold Coast, and they want to do a Guanyin session there and asked us to help lead it. So that'll be in, I think, early November. You can find the Gold Coast Dharma Realm website. But other than that, you can kind of reach out to us. I think via the contact form is probably the easiest, and then we can kind of see where's a way to continue from there. Or you can be like Ajahn Kovilo and join DRBU. Now we don't always at DRBU, but
it only takes 4 years or 2 years.
Yeah. Guanyin retreats, fantastic. Everybody should do them.
Yeah.
Well, you too. Yeah, I was trying to think of a similar plant-based metaphor that we have, and we have a shrub outside our window. So that's pretty good. But
hardy.
We do hope, we do feel the roots as well, and yeah, I'm so glad we actually got to have you two tune in and meet the community, because you've been our good friends and brothers for a long time, and we really do feel a resonance with what you're doing down there. So we're going to post the Zoom link into the chat right now for those who want to join, and we hope you visit us up here soon enough. But until then, we'll jump over to Zoom, and those who want can continue the conversation there.